Hi, welcome to Bookies. I'm Bear. You have reached the only YouTube channel that, when monetized, will give 100% of the YouTube proceeds to local libraries and literacy programs. So if that seems like a really good idea to you and you want to support our shared hobby, all you got to do is subscribe. Let me ask you a question to start. What do you do when your 14-year-old daughter starts acting a little odd and you come to a conclusion that she's possessed by a demon? What do you do about that? Well, naturally, you start a reality TV show and make a little money, right? That is the premise for today's novel, A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. Excellent premise for a novel, and let's see if he pulls it off. As I always promise to you, I'm keeping this no spoilers, so I will give you a rundown of the novel. Basically, that goes in line with what the publisher puts out or what you might read on the book jacket. And then we'll get into the review of the novel itself. Here's a rundown. Basically, this novel is set in Beverly, Massachusetts. And doesn't all the scary stuff happen in New England anyhow? Seems like that. Well, at least mostly. I'm in California, nothing scary ever happens here. This story is primarily told from the first-person perspective of Mary, who was 8 years old when her sister Marjorie started acting a little strange. So the novel is basically 15 years out in the future as Mary is talking to a best-selling author, Rachel Neville, about her experience as a child with her sister Marjorie. Another character worth noting is Karen Brissett. Karen is a snarky and cynical blogger who believes that the entire possession story with regard to Marjorie, and therefore the entire reality show called The Possession that was based off of that and filmed in the family's home while this was going on, she believes it's entirely fabricated. And in short, she starts drawing parallels from novels and films and things of that nature, by which Marjorie could have got all of her ideas about what it means to be possessed and how to act possessed. Throughout the novel, Karen's going to prop up to sow doubt as to the issue of whether Marjorie was possessed or not. The Barrett family kind of came into a need for money. They only have one income. The mom, Sarah, is working as a bank teller. The father, John, has lost employment, can't seem to get another job. And instead of really working hard to get that other job, he kind of just pulls back and he starts relying more and more on his Catholic faith. And his wife, Sarah, is having none of that. And this causes a lot of stress in the family, and Marjorie and Mary are clearly seeing this, and Marjorie starts to act out. So really the question is why? Is it because of the family stress, and that's just how Marjorie is dealing with that stress? Or is something more sinister happening? Marjorie starts to tell Mary a lot of really kind of scary stories that are certainly not appropriate to an 8-year-old, that involve a lot of violence and cause Mary to really start to fear. And Marjorie tells Mary that essentially she wants to tell her these stories because she has a lot of ghosts in her head, and this is how she can get them out of her head, is by telling the stories. And then Marjorie starts to threaten her little sister Mary with a whole bunch of unspeakable things that will happen to her if Mary tells anybody about the stories. And that's pretty much as far as we're going to go with the plot. I'm going to start by telling you that this is a good but not a great novel. The underlying premise is 5-star. What a creative idea that a child becomes possessed and the family, instead of making right choices about what's going to help that kid, start to make choices that really become profit-based. And yeah, I mean, the side effect might be an exorcism, which will help Marjorie, but really they're doing this for the money. What a creative idea. And so 5-star for the idea. I see that there were problems with the execution, however. Why do I say that? Really, this isn't a novel about a girl that's possessed by a demon. This is a novel about a girl who might be possessed by a demon. And that's the main question that the author is asking in the novel. And for you to determine whether she was or whether she's not, is she possessed by a demon or is she just gravely mentally ill? Tremblay doesn't tell and gives plenty of evidence that you could argue either side. While Marjorie is going to act in the same creepy and threatening way, regardless of whether she's possessed by a demon or just gravely mentally ill, I honestly would have preferred not to have it left so open-ended. There, and here's why. There's something about demon possession that we inherently fear and react against. It's scary because it's supernatural and deals with an intelligence that is far superior to our own. And it creates a sense of supernatural horror and helplessness. And the remedy to that supernatural intelligence that is far superior to our own is faith. That's kind of what makes a demon possession story so scary. Mental illness is a medical problem. It presents entirely different ideas to the reader. Mental illness needs treatment, it needs empathy. And the foe in mental illness is the mind. It's not a supernatural power that has always existed since the beginning of time that wants to destroy and inhabit you. One is more scary than the other, to be blunt. I would have preferred that if Tremblay wanted to sow some doubt into that issue, that he kind of lead us to a conclusion, whether it be this girl's mentally ill or this girl's demon possessed, lead us to one conclusion or the other and then sow doubt in that. I really found the both sides kind of argument kind of unconvincing, and it totally removed the element of horror for me. Once I realized that this was the question of the novel, is she possessed or not, I really started on focusing on the evidence, pro or con. And I don't know, maybe it was my training as a lawyer and prosecutor. That's kind of how my mind is trained to think. But to me, it took this novel out of the genre of horror because, I mean, frankly, it's not scary. I didn't think it was scary. And it put it more into the genre of a mystery or perhaps a thriller. And hey, this is a book hunt. We're looking for horror, right? I think that leaving it so open-ended kind of left the novel to flounder a little bit in its direction. And, you know, I think in reading a novel, for me, it's kind of the one time that I don't mind being led to a certain conclusion. Yeah, certainly I want to sleuth things out, but you know, if I'm reading a novel for the premise that a girl is possessed and they're showing it on a reality TV show, I don't want to necessarily doubt whether the girl is possessed or not. So that's the negative. One thing I really liked about this novel is that there's a plot twist at the end, and I did not anticipate that happening. And so I definitely like to be surprised in a novel, and this one got me. I was surprised. It was kind of brought up casually by the blogger Karen in this novel, and I read it and I was like, wow, did I just read that? And then I just was quiet a little bit and just let it settle because it shocked me and surprised me. So if you like surprise, this novel will definitely please you. So the only thing I can say to the author in that regard is, well done, Mr. Tremblay. You got me. Tremblay also does a really good job at crafting his characters, particularly Mary and Marjorie. The prose is suitable to the age, right? So, you know, like the last thing you want is an 8-year-old girl talking like she's an adult. A lot of times authors forget to switch back and enter the mind of an 8-year-old in this case, in Mary. And Tremblay does that really well. He writes her exactly as she needs to be written, and the style keeps in step with the characters. In total, though, I really think this novel missed the opportunity and the promise of the premise of the demon possession being presented on a reality TV show. This is a poor family that's essentially selling out their daughter in order to make a cheap buck and present what would be a very disturbing and humiliating thing about their child to the whole world that will follow that child forever. What a great and interesting premise, and kind of nothing was accomplished with it other than to present the question of, is she possessed or not? I think that was a letdown. I think a lot more could have been done with that premise. And for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give this 3.75 stars out of 5. Don't get me wrong, this novel is still above average. It's 3.75 stars. It's just a little bit underwhelming in light of the really excellent premise that was promised in this novel. With that, I'm going to thank you for actually sticking around and like and subscribe. You know, someday I'm going to figure out how to get a better background. This is crazy, but you know, look at me. I'm old. Technology, you know? Yeah. So help an old guy out by liking and subscribing. Have a great day and God bless.